Morning, how are y'all?
Good, how are you?
Good. We're so glad to be here. Thank you all for inviting us. My name is Jessica Stone, and I'm the director in the Office of Disability Access at UNT.
My name is Pamela Jackson. I go by Pam, and I'm an assistant director there at UNT in the Office of Disability Access.
And then we also have our colleagues in the TRIO office, and they'll introduce themselves and just, you guys go first.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Gans. I'm from TRIO Student Support Services. I am the graduate assistant this year.
Hi, I'm Deetra Craig. I'm the director for TRIO Student Support Services, and we are happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So throughout our presentation today, we're going to briefly just talk to you about our different offices and how we support students with disabilities and on when they come to UNT. Most everything we'll talk about today at the Office of Disability Access mirrors what it's like at any four-year institution. So we're going to talk about specific ODA, Office of Disability Access practices, but it can be generalized typically to any four-year institution that's public. They all have slightly different processes, but we're going to kind of talk about that today. So what do we do at the Office of Disability Access? We'll start by talking about that, the mission of the Office of Disability Access. We'll then talk about what is probably the biggest part of our presentation is the difference between high school accommodations and then when you go to college. We'll talk about self-advocacy and time management. That's huge for a lot of our students when they go to college. Then TRIO will talk about the amazing supports that they provide students, and then we'll open it up for questions and we'll stop the recording. So, Pam, you want to do this one?
So what we do in the disability services and why, we work so hard to make sure that our campus is accessible and inclusive for every student. And so we raise awareness, a campus community that values disability as an aspect of diversity, where inclusive practices ensure a campus that is accessible to all, free of educational, institutional, technological, and attitudinal barriers. This is accomplished through access for students, because people are disabled by barriers in society and the environment, not their impairment. So others look in and think people are limited by that. So being a hub for student engagement, we sponsor student connect groups, such as we have a deaf and blind connect group. We have a couple of other connect groups, ASD Connect, in our campus and in our office, that's sponsored by our office. So being in compliance with disability laws, we follow the federal laws, the state laws, and campus policy, as well as city ordinances.
Yep, here Pam, I'll touch on that real quick.
Okay.
So exactly like Pam said, so when most people think of like an Office of Disability Access, they think of just the academic accommodations part. But when a student transitions to college, especially a student with a disability, we hope for them to have so much more. So we really work with them to have access to the whole campus environment. So if they have a hearing diagnosis, making sure they have interpreters. If they have some sort of processing disorder, helping them understand what services are available and how to access those services. So we look at the whole environment and how do we help the student make access to that whole environment. The connect groups are a way that we really help our students do that. So like Pam talked about, we have several different groups. We have the deaf group, the blind group, we have an ASD Connect group. And so this gives the students an opportunity to come together in a safe place, talk about what's going on, and us to give resources. We always talk about, yes, we have that legal piece. So that legal piece, we do have to abide by it for federal law, state law, city ordinances. But we emphasize really the reason why we're doing it. We're doing it like Pam said, because we want students to have an inclusive environment when they come to college. And that we want them to feel like they belong just like any other student. So a lot of times we can break down those barriers by helping our campus partners and the students understand how to self-advocate and things like that. So this is a big one, and you guys have a copy of it, but what I'll emphasize here is when a student transitions from the high school or the public ed setting to college, there's a different set of laws. So in high school, it's IDEA, but then when they transfer to high school, it's college, it's Section 504 in the Americans with Disabilities Act. Why is this important? Because one of the hardest things for our students when they transition from high school to college is that self-identifying piece and that self-advocacy piece. When they come here, and I think, can you send this PowerPoint? I see parents writing a lot of notes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So when parents or students transition from high school to college, they have to self-identify. So there's nobody, like in the public school setting, they might identify, hey, we see your student having trouble with this, come get services, we'll tell you about the services we offer. They do a lot more, but when you go to college, the student has to go to the Office of Disability Access or whatever that institution calls it and say, hey, I have a disability, here's my documentation, and start the process that way. Parents can help the student start that process, but most institutions will always say we have to start with talking to that student. And then when you get to college, students also have to sign what's called a FERPA release, or a third-party release, to allow parents to be involved. And that's often really hard for some of our parents because they're so used to supporting their student that sometimes they have to let go a little bit when they get to college. So the student has to self-identify. The student has to provide that documentation. What does that documentation look like? A lot of times it can be that most recent FIE, IEPR documentation, whatever that you have. It sometimes depends, because if the documentation is really old or the student hasn't been tested in a while, for certain disabilities or for certain barriers, we may ask for additional documentation. But that would be something that we would have that conversation after we looked over your present documentation. We never want to put the student through additional testing. We never want to ask the student to have additional barriers. So we always try to work with what they have. Oh yeah, so there's 3 parts when you get to college of determining accommodations. The first part is the application. So we look at what the student puts on their application. But we also recognize, especially transitioning from high school, that students may not be able to really articulate what they need. So that's only one piece of what the data that we use. We look at the evaluation data. So like, do they have a learning disability evaluation? Do they have a mental health assessment? So we look at that evaluation data. But then we also really look at that student narrative. So what are they telling us about how they experience their disability? 2 students with ADHD are not going to experience it the same. So what does that individual student have trouble with? What are their strengths, and what are some areas that they need a little more support in? We look at both of those. And then we come together, we determine their accommodations. Parents can support. So in our office, every office works differently, but in our office, we do invite parents in if the student wants to come in and have that registration meeting with us where we talk about accommodations. We do invite parents in if the student wants. Because we, again, recognize transitioning from high school to college is sometimes harder, but we're always gonna go back to that student. What would you like? What do you think? Because it's all about them. And then throughout somebody's educational journey, if they have problems, we do have really caring faculty that will try and support, but they're not going to follow up like we do in high school. So it's up to the student to self-advocate and let us know that they're having problems. And then unless the student participates in a program that's specifically for intellectual and developmental disabilities, it's an inclusive classroom. Well, I guess we'll do questions at the end. Okay. All right, you want to do this one?
Well, Jessica hit it a lot. Self-advocacy is really big for students. So we advise parents, go ahead and work on self-advocacy skills while they're in high school. Like Jessica said, we do allow the parents to come in, but we mostly focus on that student. And we will provide skills when they have issues in the classroom. A lot of times they're gonna say, this is going on, can you help me? What we will do is say, number one, have you spoken to your instructor about it? So we give them those skills to self-advocate for themselves. So it's really big. So we want them really to believe in themselves. So it's important also for you to do things like help them know what their disability is. A lot of times K through 12, they don't even know. So help them know what that disability is. Also, along with that, help them know their weaknesses, their strengths. When they come into our office and we have that meeting, we focus on what are you good at, what are your strengths, what do you really need help in, things of that sort. So self-advocacy is really a big piece for them.
And that's one of the biggest areas that we see students struggle with when they come to us. But, so Pam talked about that we provide a lot of support and we'll help them learn how to self-advocate. But TRIO, in just a few minutes, they'll talk about the resources they provide in that area as well. All right, so understanding your disability. This is huge. Like Pam said, a lot of times our students know, like sometimes they'll go to different meetings about their disability, and sometimes they kind of know what their disability is, but they don't have as much knowledge because we've supported them as a school district, or we've supported them as family, and so they don't necessarily know too much about their disability. That's going to be hard when they get to college, because they have to know what their disability is and how it impacts them. So, and not just in the classroom. So it impacts you with your education, but how does it impact you socially? How does it impact you in housing? So it's really important that they know their disability. And sometimes I've heard families say, you know, we want to shield our student from it because we don't want them to necessarily worry about it or perseverate on it. And I understand that, but we also have to take a look at, okay, how do we frame it to the student so they don't do that, but they also know their disability for college, but also beyond. I can tell you, I am blind, I am a person with a disability, and leading up to college, I also wasn't given a whole lot of information about my disability. And so then when I entered the college setting, it was a huge shock. It was a lot of, it was hard. So continuing to know more about your disability and the student is huge. Time management. Time management is going to look very different for every student, especially students who have different executive functioning disorders or different things that affect time management. What we want you to really emphasize is helping your student figure out what works for them. And this is oftentimes where the school district and their teachers really come in as really good partners with this. So how does your student organize? Is a paper planner the best way? Is Google Calendar the best way? Is Outlook? Is Post-it notes? There are many different ways, but time management is one of the things that our students have the most struggle in. Because when they get to college, they have to really focus on their academics, but then a lot of students with disabilities take a lot more time to do different things because they are accommodating their disability. So time management becomes even more essential for students with disabilities. So we really encourage them to, and you, to like, okay, if they have different activities or they have different even extracurricular activities, how do we prioritize these? How do we put these into a calendar so that we can practice these skills so that when they get to college, it's not a completely new experience for them doing it independently. And then those are just a few ideas that our students typically utilize. Color coding is one that our students have started to use a lot nowadays, and then using their iPhone. They'll use their iPhone and Android and Google Calendar all the time. All right, so we'll open it up for questions at the end, but I now want to introduce our colleagues, Deetra and Caitlin, to talk about TRIO.
You just get to hang out with me.
Thank you, Jessica.
I can move it if you guys want.
So TRIO Student Support Services is a federally funded project. How many of you have heard of TRIO Student Support Services or TRIO programs?
Just
So we are, like I said, a federally funded project, and at UNT we serve 268 first-generation low-income and or students with documented disabilities. And we get these funds from the Department of Education. It's a grant that we apply for every 5 years, and we have to show the need on the campus that the program is needed. And so we do that by working a lot with our colleagues. We work a lot with ODA, and we share students with the program as well. And we have several students who, I know we worked with Jessica one-on-one with one particular student the entire year, and he went on and graduated, and I think he applied, I know he applied to work at Crowley ISD. I'm not sure if he actually got in Desmond, but I'm not sure if he actually got into work there. But we work through the whole, we work with students from freshmen all the way through to senior, and then if they desire to go on to graduate school, we help with that process as well.
Yep.
And
So, yeah, like I actually share relationships with ODA and TRIO. So, as a freshman, I joined TRIO SSS immediately. Also, ODA immediately. I have dyslexia, so I was like, okay, how can I get the best support so I can just make it through my 4 years? And I would say that both services were just absolutely amazing. Like, I'll start with ODA. ODA absolutely helped me with my self-advocacy. It also gave me like the confidence to know that someone was in my corner and that were able to give me the resources that I can use to be successful in my college career. With TRIO Student Support Services, I cannot say enough amazing things about that program because when I came in, I had little to no self-advocacy. So that's really important, like super, super important to work on with your students. So when I came in, I was super shy. I was so used to having my mama bear in my corner doing everything for me and fighting for me. But when you get to college and you're like 6 hours away from home, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So coming to TRIO Student Support Services, I was able to kind of be in an environment with people that were just so laid back and open and kind of like walk me through some things. If I had questions about financial aid or FOSFA or, you know, how to do my classes, how to access my audit. I mean, they really helped me walk through it, you know, time management as well, budgeting as well. So if you are interested, it's such a good program. I was there from freshman year to when I graduated last year, and I got an opportunity to work as a graduate assistant, which is crazy. I never thought I would be a master's student, but here I am and speaking to you all. Like, my freshman middle school person, little Caitlin, would never like imagine myself being here talking to you without, you know, being super nervous and sweating a lot. So, I mean, I learned a lot about myself through TRIO and through ODA, just having that solid support system that we kind of, that's tailored to you one-on-one, because we have advisors that have one-on-one sessions with you. So we meet twice a semester in the beginning, just to like meet you, figure out your goals and things like that. And towards the end of the semester, so we kind of figure out, you know, what happened during the semester, how did you feel about it, what can you make changes about, do you need help for registering for spring classes or the next semester or summer classes, and things of that nature. So, like I said, I mean, both programs followed me, even now as a master's student, second semester, they've always been in my corner, so it's a really great resource. And we also do a bunch of fun things. So, last semester, we went to a Mavericks game, so that's kind of like our cultural enrichment. And we also do really cool conferences. So, before COVID, we had opportunities to go to Los Angeles and New York for a leadership conference, Circle of Change.
Yes.
Circle of Change. So that was a really cool experience. All of it was free, flights, hotel, free for our students. It was covered by our grant. And then this year we have the opportunity to go to Austin to kind of go see the legislative process, kind of advocate for student support services, low income, first generation, and disability. So we offer a lot of opportunities for students to kind of see the world, see what they can be, and they're not just confined to their environment. They can spread their wings and they can develop their wings and do whatever they want to do. So it's a really, really great program.
Okay, and then this just talks a little bit more about our program, what we offer, and then the eligibility requirements. So you do have to be, because we are federally funded, you do have to be a U.S. citizen, national or permanent resident, and then you have to be admitted and enrolled to UNT before we can actually offer you services, and then you can apply to our program. And then you just meet one or more of the following criteria, not all of them. You have to either be first generation, low income determined by federal guidelines, or documented disability registered with Jessica's office, ODA.
And we offer, these are our services that we do offer. So like I said, we have academic preparedness. That's what I talked about, that 101 advisors. So right now we have, can I say 3 advisors now? We have 3
Yes.
advisors now that your students can pick from. And they'll just be with your student throughout their college career, however long you're here at TRIO. Like I said, we'll work on budgeting, financial aid, FOSFA, time management, anything that your student is struggling with or has questions about, we'll walk you through it with our advising sessions. We have educational mentoring, which I'm over, so we'll have mentoring and tutoring. It's a program where those two are combined, but your student can take one or the other, whatever they need. We have career preparation and graduate school exploration, so those two, with your advisors, will walk you through your career options. If you're trying to be a teacher, for example, we'll kind of walk through the process and make sure that you understand what your next step is gonna be. Also, we provide free graduate school prep books, so the GMAT, LSAT, GRE, we have those books. If there's like any other resource that you need, like for the teacher certifications, like the PBR exam, we can get those for you through our grant. So you don't have to pay for all those expensive books, we can get you ready to go. We also have like, pre-computer lab usage and printing, have a big flat screen TV. We can watch like Netflix and Disney Plus, play Switch, Xbox, have a good time,
Yes,
So
yes.
it's not just the serious side, we have the fun side
Yes.
as well, so we have all of it. We try to say that we kind of put all of the campus resources into one location, so you're not having that run around and going from here to there, you can always get it in Trio. And if we don't have something, we can always outsource you somewhere, point you in the correct direction, so. Yep. Great. Awesome.
And then I just wanted to kind of add a little bit, and then I'll stop the video and we'll open it up to questions. I've met with so many of you in the room already, but we really do talk about, just to kind of mirror what y'all have said, is disclosing a disability and practicing how that sounds natural. And when I go into transition meetings, I'm like, my name is blank, I have a disability, it impacts me in the following ways. These are the supports I need to be successful. And that's kind of what they're saying, is to make sure that your child knows, I know what my disability is, I know how it impacts me, and I really liked how y'all said, not just academically, it could be socially or just how I manage my time. And usually when I start my transition meetings, I'll say, I kind of lead with my vulnerabilities. Technology, I struggled if you weren't here earlier. And I said that's an area that I have difficulties with. I say sometimes I talk too fast. Tell me to slow down. Also, not a great speller. You're gonna see little red lines when I'm typing my notes. I will go back and fix them. But just being comfortable, being able to say those things, and we all have strengths and weaknesses, and when we are at ARD meetings, we really want your child to participate. I say it starts at age 3. At age 3. And then I don't need you to stay the whole time, but I need you to be a part of it. And we do our SPIN model, which y'all kind of, it's similar, but strengths, preferences, interests, and needs. And if your child is able to say, I'm strong at this, I prefer working with 2 people, not in a group of 5 or more. I'm interested in this is what I need. I need a lot of extra time in math. I just need a little bit of extra time in reading. What does that little and a lot mean? Because when you go and you're asking for those supports, a little is hard to, quantify. I need 30 extra minutes, or I need an extra day. So I just think that when I hear, I'm always future planning. So if I meet you and you have a 3-year-old, I'm thinking of them when they're 30. Like,